Well, here we are again. And today we're going to be talking about February 2018. It seemed like a lot of you enjoyed my insight on January, on the previous month, so I figured I would keep it rolling. Now, even though February was a slower month, mostly due to weather and just lack of shows, it was also a very eventful with a lot of turning points during those course of those 5 shows that I had. Now, first we kicked it off. We went to Winona for AWF, and I wrestled Eric Cannon, who has been basically my rival everywhere where we go. And I think we're just going to do this forever. This year, 2019, we should hit over 100 matches against each other. And a lot of people are always like, oh, we've wrestled so many more times, Well, I'll tell you this. I have a spreadsheet that I keep track of every single match I've ever had. So I know. So for all of you people who ever have been like, oh, you've wrestled them like 30 times, 40 times, we've wrestled 40. No, we haven't. You just think it's a lot. But that's also how we get people who assume they've had way more matches than they really have. So Eric Cannon and I continued our little rivalry into Winona. But then I was supposed to, the next week, go to Freelance. And you'd think, remember, I'm supposed to get my championship match here? Didn't happen. Not because Sugar wasn't there, but because the show didn't happen. It got snowed out. And I guess safety first, but I live in Minnesota. I'm used to this kind of weather. But I digress. You know, you never know what's in the future. And the show was only pushed back a week, which left the following week to be a very busy one. So I go into Freelance. And the funny part is because, well, I guess I jumped the gun. Sugar isn't there. He's overseas. And I get put in a #1 contenders match, and I'm strictly believing that this was just to add a little bit of intrigue. Because also, I'm not sure if I was supposed to be the guy who's supposed to take the championship in 2018. I don't know if anyone saw that, so they put me in there with Ethan Page, Space Monkey, and Isaias. All very capable competitors, all who could be champions in their own right, and I beat them in a 4-way match. And you'll notice the theme of this particular weekend in February is multi-man matches. But I won my #1 contendership, and I grabbed the microphone again. And I let everybody else have it. I was determined to be Freelance champion in 2018. And then it's heading back for Crushed, where I teamed up with Petey Brown. And I'll be the first to admit that I don't know how this team worked or how we were undefeated, but we scored another big victory, and I don't have explanations for it. Normally, a lot of times when I'm in tags, it doesn't end well, which we'll get to in a second. But the big one of the more memorable moments of this month is Heavy on Wrestling. Now, when I won the championship, I beat Eric Cannon. See, that rivalry, it spans everywhere. That's how I won the championship. From then on, I always heard rumors of how Heavy on Wrestling was going to take the championship from me, whether it be Mitch Paradise, whether it be some incoming star, whether it be Lance Hoyt or somebody that hadn't lost the championship, which, Lance, I'll give you credit, you did not. You had to vacate it due to injury, but I picked up the championship and I beat Eric Cannon in what is one of the best matches in Heavy on Wrestling history. So, don't count me short either. But after having this epic 2 out of 3 falls match at Heavy On, I could see that the gears were already turning to put it on somebody who fit the mold of Heavy On Wrestling. You know, that star of yesteryear, the guy that you could put on a 1980s poster, and actually most of the guys who still wrestle from the 1980s are exactly the kind of guys that Heavy On Wrestling likes. Whether, if you're going to go into the future, maybe update a little bit more. Maybe go 30 years, you know, when somebody who can hold the company and can do it and will show up and put in time, that's me. But I could see the deck getting stacked against me. I beat Eric Cannon. Then I go on to have to wrestle Airwolf and Cody Rice. Both, I'm not knocking them as competitors, but what I'm saying is in a multi-man match, anything could happen. And luckily I caught Airwolf, as the veteran I am, I caught him in the ginger snap and beat him. So then what do we do in February? We go me versus Airwolf, who I beat, versus Cody Rice, who I beat, and versus Eric Cannon, who I beat, in a fatal 4-way. If there was ever an example of stacking the deck against me, I think we have it right here. And what ultimately happens? Did I get pinned? No. Did I lose my championship? Yes. And did we go in a different direction? from seemingly the optimistic future that Heavy on Wrestling could have had? Sure. And I know a lot of you will say, well, Airwolf is the future. But what happened that night is Ken Anderson beat Airwolf almost immediately for one of the shortest championship reigns, not only in Heavy On, but in Minnesota. And if there was ever a moment where I knew I was getting pushed out of the championship picture, it was then. The match ended up leading to Ken Anderson versus Airwolf, and I seemingly was forgotten about. But there was a very vocal minority that knew that I deserved better than I was getting at Heavy On. And I'm going to leave it at that for now. And I'm going to just say that things could have been a whole lot easier and we could have avoided a lot of these problems had we just given me a fair match. But my time has come. And then finally I wrap up the show, I wrap up this month with Pro Wrestling Battleground. Now, many people at Pro Wrestling Battleground have seen me there. I started in 2010. And they've seen my career win championships. They've seen me be the top guy, being one of the more entertaining. I mean, like, it didn't matter where I was on the card. I was always one of the more entertaining guys there. I've won the Rice Street Rumble. I've beaten the who's who of everybody who's come through Minnesota. And then I face Petey Brown, who I just mentioned we're undefeated as a team together. But I've had a little bit of history with Petey there. And I felt it was time to shake things up at Battleground. So what did I do? I left a lasting impression on Petey Brown. Now, Petey, I'm really glad, because normally you're pretty injury prone, so you got off easy, so just keep that in mind. So if you have any grudge, I could have probably broken all your glass bones in your body, but I digress. See, the problem is, I needed to establish that I was the Darin Corbin that could still win championships. So I regressed to my old ways, turning on somebody who could have been an ally at one time, making sure that I didn't do it for the Pro Wrestling Battleground fans, because ever since I started embracing them, I started losing. And I noticed people gaining ground. I noticed that I was seemingly the guy that you had to beat the gatekeeper to beat at Battleground. I didn't like that. I should be the guy, the champion. I should be the top guy. I should be the one. If I'm a gatekeeper of any kind, I should be the one keeping people out of Pro Wrestling Battleground. You can go elsewhere, but you can't have a place that I made my home for 9 years. So, real quick with that. I ended the month seemingly right back in the same position that I started at Battleground. But I was also ready to put myself in the championship picture again. So I consider that a win-win. Sometimes you gotta make those hard decisions. And sometimes you got to be the bad guy if you want to be successful in this business, especially in Minnesota. So, thank you again for joining us. Of course, we'll do another recap coming up. What do you think is the next topic that we'll talk about? Well, probably March, right? Yeah, because that's coming up. And you won't want to miss it. So, stay tuned, keep posted, subscribe, follow me on social media, and I will see you next time. Thanks for joining us.